The classroom was filled with students from dozens of different worlds. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked almost human but with strange colored skin or extra limbs. Jake sat in the middle row, trying to focus on the lecture. He was 19 years old and had been at the Stellar Concordance Academy for almost 2 years now. The academy was built on Harmony Point, a massive space station where young people from all over the galaxy came to learn about each other. Professor stood at the front of the room. Which meant he looked like a tall blue creature with 4 arms and large dark eyes. He had been teaching for over 40 years and knew almost everything about the different species in the Galactic Council. Today's lesson was about historical conflicts between species and how they were resolved. Jake tried to pay attention, but his mind kept drifting. 3 months ago, his younger brother Danny had died in an accident on one of Earth's colony worlds. The colony's life support system had failed, and 53 people died before help arrived. Jake still had nightmares about getting the news. A voice broke through his thoughts. It was a student who sat 2 rows behind Jake. They were tall reptilian creatures with dark green scales and sharp claws. They were known throughout the galaxy for being strong, fast, and extremely proud of their heritage. "Professor, I have a question," said. His voice had a hissing quality to it. "Why do we spend so much time studying human conflicts? They only joined the council 15 years ago. They are barely civilized." Several students turned to look. Some of the alien students nodded in agreement. The few other humans in the class shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Professor's 4 arms moved in a calming gesture. "All species have valuable lessons to teach us. The humans may be new to space travel, but their history is rich with examples of both conflict and cooperation." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. They are violent primitives who somehow stumbled into space technology. My people were exploring the stars when humans were still living in caves." Jake's jaw tightened. He wanted to say something, but he forced himself to stay quiet. Getting into an argument would not help anyone. He had already been warned once about his temper. In the back corner of the classroom, a young woman watched the exchange with calm eyes. Carter was 21 years old and in her 4th year at the academy. She studied advanced combat theory and psychology, which meant she learned how different species thought and fought. She rarely spoke in class, preferring to observe and listen, but she never missed anything. Had noticed Jake's reaction to his comments. She had also noticed that this was not the first time he had made such statements. The student seemed to enjoy insulting humans whenever he had the chance. The class continued, but the tension remained. Professor tried to move the discussion to other topics, but kept bringing it back to humanity's supposed inferiority. He talked about how humans were too emotional, too aggressive, and too unpredictable to be trusted with important roles in the galactic community. "They cannot even terraform their colony worlds properly," said at one point. "Just last quarter, one of their colonies lost life support and killed dozens of people. Such incompetence would never happen with technology." Jake's hands balled into fists under his desk. That was his brother's colony. That was where Danny died. The accident report said it was caused by a faulty valve that the manufacturing company had failed to inspect properly. It had nothing to do with human incompetence. Saw Jake's reaction. She saw his shoulders tense and his breathing change. She also saw a glance in Jake's direction with what might have been a smile on his reptilian face. When the class finally ended, students began gathering their things and heading for the door. Jake stood up quickly, wanting to get out before he did something stupid, but was faster. Called out as Jake passed his desk. "I heard about your brother, such a shame. If he had been born, he would have survived. We are simply built better than humans." Jake stopped walking. Every muscle in his body went rigid. He turned slowly to face, who now stood at his full height. There was at least 6 inches taller than Jake and probably 50 pounds heavier, all of it muscle. "What did you say?" Jake's voice was quiet and dangerous. Tilted his head in mock confusion. "I simply stated a fact. Your species is weak. Your brother's death proves it. No would have died in such a simple accident." Other students had stopped to watch. Some looked uncomfortable, others seemed interested in seeing what would happen. Professor had already left the classroom, heading to his next lecture. "Take it back," Jake said. "Apologize right now." Laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Why would I apologize for speaking the truth? You humans are too sensitive. You let your emotions control you. This is why you will never be truly respected in the council. You are children playing at being adults." The corridor outside the classroom was filling with students now. Word was spreading that something was happening. A crowd began to form, creating a circle around Jake and... "My brother was braver than you will ever be," Jake said. His voice was shaking with barely controlled rage. "He died trying to save others. He stayed in the damaged section to help people evacuate. What have you ever done besides insult people who cannot fight back?" Sighs narrowed. "Cannot fight back? Is that a challenge, human? Are you threatening me?" "I am telling you to apologize," Jake said. "Show some respect for the dead." "The dead?" Laughed again. "Why should I respect the dead when they were weak in life? Your brother died because humans are fragile. Your species' entire history is filled with death and failure. You wage war on yourselves. You poison your own planet. You kill each other over resources and ideas. And now you come into space and expect us to treat you as equals. You are nothing but primitive who got lucky." The crowd had grown larger. Students were recording on their devices. Security alerts were probably already going off somewhere in the station systems. Jake knew he should walk away. He knew that fighting would only prove his point about humans being too violent and emotional. But he could not let this go. Not this time, not when was mocking his brother's death. Jake's eyes scanned the crowd and found Carter standing near the edge. She was watching with the same calm expression she always had, but there was something different in her eyes now. Something alert and ready. Took a step closer to Jake. "You want to hit me, do not you? I can see it in your face. Go ahead, human. Show everyone what your kind is really like. Show them the violence that you pretend to have evolved past. Prove to everyone here that you are nothing but an animal from a savage world." Jake's breathing was heavy now. His heart pounded in his chest. Every instinct told him to walk away, but all he could see was his brother's face. All he could hear was his mother crying when they got the news. All he could feel was the rage that had been building for 3 months. "You have nothing to say?" pressed. No clever response. Perhaps humans are not just. Jake's fist flew towards face, but that was faster. Moved his head to the side, and Jake's punch hit nothing but air. Before Jake could recover his balance, his clawed hand shot out and grabbed Jake's wrist. The twisted hard, and Jake felt pain shoot up his arm. Pulled Jake forward and drove his other fist into Jake's stomach. The air rushed out of Jake's lungs, and he stumbled backward, gasping. The crowd of students made noise, some shouting encouragement, others calling for them to stop. But no one moved to break up the fight. Jake forced himself to stand up straight. His stomach hurt and his wrist throbbed, but he was not done. He charged it again, trying to tackle him, but simply stepped aside and shoved Jake as he passed. Jake crashed into a wall, his shoulder hitting hard against the metal surface. "Is this the best humans can do?" called out to the crowd. "I have barely moved and he is already injured. This is pathetic." Several students in the crowd cheered for. They made hissing sounds that might have been laughter. Some students from other species looked uncomfortable but did not interfere. The unwritten rule of the academy was that if 2 students had a problem, they worked it out themselves. Security would come eventually, but until then, this was between Jake and... Jake pushed himself away from the wall. Blood ran from a cut above his eyebrow where his head had hit the wall. He wiped it away with his hand and faced again. He knew he was outmatched. They were simply built better for fighting. They had faster reflexes, stronger muscles, and natural weapons in the form of their claws, but Jake did not care about any of that right now. He threw another punch, then another, blocked them both easily. There was not even breathing hard. He was playing with Jake, letting him attack just to show how useless it was. "You see," said to the watching students. "Humans are persistent, I will give them that, but persistence without skill is just stupidity. He keeps attacking even though he knows he cannot win. This is the human way. They throw themselves at problems with brute force and emotion instead of using intelligence." Jake tried a kick this time, caught his leg and threw him down to the floor. Jake's back hit hard and he felt the impact through his whole body. Stars danced in his vision for a moment. Through the crowd, Carter moved closer. She did not push or shove her way through. She simply walked, and students moved aside for her without quite knowing why. Her eyes never left the fight. She was counting his moves, watching his patterns, noting every detail of how he fought. New combat styles. She had studied them for 3 years. She knew their strengths and their weaknesses. She knew exactly where their joints were most vulnerable and which pressure points would drop them fastest. But she did not move to help Jake yet. She was waiting for the right moment. Jake got up again. His face was bruised now and he was breathing hard. But he moved forward once more, seemed almost bored now. He swatted away Jake's attempts to hit him like they were nothing. "Your brother died weak," said quietly, just loud enough for Jake to hear. "And you will live weak. This is the human legacy, weakness pretending to be strength." Jake roared and launched himself at with everything he had left. For a moment he actually connected. His fist hits chest, but it was like hitting stone. The did not even flinch. Grabbed Jake by the throat with one hand and lifted him off the ground. Jake's feet dangled in the air as he struggled to breathe. Claws pressed against Jake's skin, not quite breaking through, but close enough that Jake could feel them. "You started this fight, human," said. His voice was cold now, no longer mocking. "You threw the first punch, everyone here saw it. Whatever happens next is your own fault." Jake clawed its hand, trying to break free. Black spots appeared in his vision as his brain ran out of oxygen. The crowd had gone quiet now. This was no longer a simple fight. This was turning dangerous. Threw Jake to the ground. Jake landed hard on his hands and knees, coughing and gasping for air. His throat felt like it was on fire. "Stay down," commanded. "Admit that humans are inferior. Admit that your brother died because your species is weak. Say it, and I will let you crawl away with whatever dignity you have left." Jake's arms shook as he tried to push himself up. Everything hurt. His ribs ached, his throat burned, his head pounded. He could barely see through the blood and sweat in his eyes, but he forced himself to look up at. "No," Jake said. His voice was rough and barely audible, but the word was clear. His eyes went cold. "Then you are even more stupid than I thought." He raised his clawed hand high. The claws extended fully, sharp enough to tear through flesh and bone. The crowd gasped. This was no longer about teaching a lesson. This was about to become murder. His hand started to come down toward Jake's exposed back. "That is enough." The voice was calm and clear. It cut through the noise of the crowd like a knife. Everyone turned to look. Carter stood at the edge of the circle. She had not raised her voice, but somehow everyone heard her perfectly. She looked at with steady eyes that showed no fear. Paused with his hand still raised. "This does not concern you, human. Walk away while you can." Did not walk away. Instead, she stepped forward into the circle. She spoke in a language that made several students gasp. It was the formal dialect used for official challenges and legal matters. Most humans could not speak more than a few words of it. The grammar was too complex, and the pronunciation required sounds that human throats were not designed to make, but spoke it perfectly. She was issuing a formal honor duel challenge. His eyes widened in surprise. He lowered his hand and turned fully to face. "You speak the old tongue?" he said in Standard. "I do," replied, switching back to Standard so everyone could understand. "And I have issued a proper challenge according to your people's law. You must accept or forfeit all honor before these witnesses." The other students in the crowd began speaking rapidly to each other in their own language, looked around at them. Honor was everything to the people. If he refused a proper challenge, especially one witnessed by so many, his reputation would be destroyed. But accepting meant fighting this human woman. He looked up and down. She was about 5'7", much shorter than him. She looked strong, but not as strong as Jake had been, and Jake had been easy to defeat. How much harder could this be? "I accept," said, "but know that I will not go easy on you just because you are female. In my culture, that would be an insult." "Good," said simply. She walked past to where Jake was still on the ground. She knelt down beside him and helped him sit up. "You did well," she said quietly. "You stood up for your brother. Now let me finish what you started." Jake looked at her through swollen eyes. "You do not have to do this." "Yes, I do," said. She helped him to his feet and guided him to the edge of the circle where other students caught him and helped him stay upright. Turned back to face. The crowd had gone completely silent now. Security was definitely coming, but they were still at least 2 or 3 minutes away. That would be more than enough time. Reached up and pulled off her academy jacket. Underneath, she wore a simple tank top. Her arms were covered in scars. Long, thin scars that could only have been made by claws. Saw them and for the first time looked uncertain. "Where did you get those?" he asked. "I earned them," said. She dropped her jacket to the ground and took a fighting stance. It was not any style that recognized. It looked loose and relaxed, but there was something about the way she held herself that made him nervous. "Last chance to withdraw your challenge," said. He was trying to sound confident, but some of that confidence was gone now. Did not respond with words. She simply nodded once, ready. Attacked. He moved fast, faster than he had moved against Jake. His clawed hand slashed towards face. But when his claws reached where her head had been, she was not there anymore. She had moved just slightly, just enough. His claws cut through empty air. Spun and attacked again, swayed backward. His fist missed by less than an inch. He tried's first strike was so fast that most of the watching students missed it. Her hand shot out and hit in the side, right where his ribs connected to his spine. It was a spot unique to biology, a nerve cluster that sent pain through their entire body when struck correctly. Made a sound like a hiss and stumbled sideways. He looked shocked. How did this human know about that weakness? He did not have time to think about it, was already moving. She struck again, this time at his knee joint. Knees bent differently than human knees, and they had a vulnerable point on the outside that could make the leg buckle. Hit that exact spot. His leg gave out and he dropped to one knee. He swung wildly with his claws, but she was not there. She had already moved behind him. Her foot struck the back of his other knee, and now he was down on both knees. Get up, said calmly. Her voice showed no emotion at all. You are not done yet. Pushed himself to his feet, breathing harder now. He faced with new respect and new fear in his eyes. This human was not like Jake. This human knew exactly what she was doing. He attacked again, trying to use his reach advantage, but moved inside his guard, too close for him to use his long arms effectively. She struck his shoulder joint, the soft spot under his arm, and his right arm went numb for a moment. Before he could adjust, she hit his left side in the same place. Both of his arms hung useless at his sides for several seconds. He tried to kick her but caught his leg and twisted. She did not try to match his strength. She used his own momentum against him, adding just enough force to send him crashing to the ground. The watching students could not believe what they were seeing. Some of the in the crowd were speaking rapidly to each other, their voices filled with confusion and shock. This was not supposed to be possible. Humans were weaker than everyone knew that. Got up more slowly this time. Feeling had returned to his arms, but they ached. His knees hurt, his ribs hurt, and he had not managed to hit this human even once. He changed tactics, abandoning the formal fighting style he had been using. Instead, he just charged at her with pure aggression, using his size and weight to try to overwhelm her. Waited until he was almost on top of her, then dropped low and swept his legs out from under him. Crashed to the ground face first. Before he could roll away, was on him. Her knee pressed into his back, right on another nerve point. Her hand grabbed his arm and twisted it at an angle that made his shoulder scream with pain. You can give up now, said quietly. Say the words and this ends. Tried to throw her off with his greater strength, but the angle she had him pinned at made it impossible. Any movement just made the pain worse. Increased the pressure slightly. I am giving you a choice, she said. That is more mercy than you showed Jake. Said nothing. His pride would not let him submit. Not to a human, not in front of all these witnesses. Released him and stepped back, scrambled to his feet, panting now. He was hurt, humiliated, and getting desperate. How, he demanded. How do you know our fighting style? How do you know our weak points? His expression did not change. I studied, she said simply. That is what humans do. We learn, we adapt. You thought we were just violent and stupid. You were wrong. She started walking in a slow circle around him, turned to keep her in sight, but his movements were sluggish now. He was tiring while looked like she had just started. 3 years ago, I decided to understand continued. Her voice was still calm, almost casual. I studied your biology, your culture, your combat forms. I trained with 17 different opponents in sanctioned matches. I defeated all of them. His eyes widened. That is not possible. It is documented, said. I can show you the records if you survive this, but right now you need to make a choice. You can give up with some dignity left, or I can keep going until you cannot continue. Never hissed. He attacked again, but there was no strategy left in his movements, just desperation and fatting strength. Moved like water flowing around his attacks. She struck his ribs, his shoulder, behind his knee. Each hit was precise and devastating. She was not trying to kill him or even permanently injure him. She was systematically shutting down his ability to fight. You said humans were too emotional, said as she dodged another wild swing. But emotion without discipline is useless. She hit his elbow joint. You said humans were too weak. Another strike to his side. But we are strong enough. She swept his legs again. You said we were primitives. She caught him in a hold that made him gasp with pain. But we learned from every species we met, including yours. Professor had arrived now, along with security officers. But they stood at the edge of the crowd, watching. This was an honor duel under law. They could not interfere until one side gave up or was unable to continue. Released from the hold and let him struggle back to his feet. He could barely stand now. His breathing was labored and his movements were slow and pained. "My little sister was named," said. Her voice was softer now, but everyone could still hear her in the silent corridor. "She was 12 years old when raiders killed her. This was before the peace treaty, when your people and mine were enemies. Do you know what she was doing when she died? She was trying to help younger children evacuate, just like Jake's brother did." Stared at her, comprehension dawning in his eyes. "I could have hated all," continued. "I could have let that hate control me. Instead, I studied your people. I learned everything about you, not to destroy you, but to understand you, to prevent what happened to from happening to others. That is what humans do. We turn pain into purpose." She took a step toward. He tried to back away but stumbled. "You mocked Jake for caring about his brother's death," said. "You called it weakness, but caring about others, protecting the innocent, honoring those we have lost, these things are not weakness. They are what make us strong." Tried one last time to attack, but his body would not obey him anymore. He swung his arm and simply caught it. She twisted just slightly and gasped as pain shot through his shoulder again. Executed a final combination of moves that was so fast the watching students barely saw it happen. 3 strikes in less than 2 seconds. His legs gave out completely. He collapsed to the ground, unable to rise. He was not seriously injured, but every muscle in his body screamed with pain. He could not continue. Stood over him and spoke informal again. She was declaring her victory in the traditional words, asking for his acknowledgement of defeat. Lay on the ground, staring up at her. His pride was shattered. His worldview was broken. Everything he had believed about human inferiority had just been proven wrong in the most direct way possible. "I yield," he said in standard, then repeated it in, the formal words of submission. Nodded and stepped back. She had won. The honor duel was over. The corridor was completely silent for a long moment. Then students began speaking all at once, their voices overlapping in dozens of languages. The security officers moved in to help and check on Jake. Professor approached. His 4 arms moved in a gesture of respect. "That was expertly done, Ms. Carter. You showed great skill and remarkable restraint." "Thank you, Professor," said. She turned to look at where Jake was being supported by other human students. He was watching her with something like awe in his bruised face. Walked over to him. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Like I got hit by a shuttle," Jake said, trying to smile through split lips. "But I will be okay. You were amazing. Where did you learn all that?" "I will tell you later," said. She looked at the medical team arriving with stretchers for both and Jake. "Right now, you need to get to the medical bay." As the medical team loaded Jake onto a stretcher, he grabbed his hand. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for finishing it, for defending him." Squeezed his hand gently. "Your brother would be proud of you. You stood up when it mattered. That takes courage." Jake was taken away and stood alone in the corridor as the crowd began to disperse. Students from different species looked at her with new respect as they passed. Some nodded to her. Others whispered to each other, no doubt spreading the story of what they had just witnessed. A young student smaller than approached hesitantly. "Excuse me," he said in careful standard. "What you did, that was our high combat form. Only our best warriors know those techniques. How did you learn them?" Looked at him. "I asked a master to teach me. He was willing once I proved I was serious about understanding your people, not just defeating them." The young's eyes showed surprise and respect. He touched his chest in a traditional gesture of honor and walked away. Picked up her jacket from the ground and put it back on. She looked down at her arms before the sleeves covered them. Those scars were from the day died when had fought to protect the other children. She had been 17 then, and no match for trained K. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. Jake lay on one of the beds, his face cleaned up and bandaged. The doctors had given him something for the pain, and his eyes were starting to get heavy. But he was awake when arrived. She sat in the chair next to his bed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Why did you help me?" Jake finally asked. "We barely know each other." Was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was softer than Jake had ever heard it. "Because I have been where you are, angry, hurt, ready to fight even when you know you will lose. Your sister, Jake said. You said they killed her. Nodded. 7 years ago, before the peace treaty. My family was stationed on a border colony. The raided it. Was trying to help younger children evacuate when they attacked. She did not make it. I am sorry, Jake said. Me too, replied. I was 17. I joined Earth's military the next year. I wanted to fight. I wanted revenge, but my commander was smart. He saw what I was becoming and he showed me a better way. She leaned back in the chair and looked up at the ceiling. He told me that the best way to honor was not to kill more but to understand them, to learn why they fought, to find ways to prevent future conflicts. So that is what I did. I studied psychology. I learned about culture, their biology, their fighting styles. I trained with them. I ate with them. I listened to their stories. And they trained you? Jake asked, even knowing you wanted to fight them. Not at first, admitted. But I found a master named N. He had lost his own daughter in the war with humans. We understood each other's pain. He taught me that true strength is not about winning fights. It is about ending them on your terms with mercy when possible. Jake thought about that. You could have ended it faster with, I saw how you moved, you were holding back. I was teaching, said. If I had just knocked him out in the first few seconds, he would have learned nothing. He would have made excuses. By taking it slow, by explaining what I was doing, I forced him to understand that he was wrong. Not just about me, but about humans in general. Before Jake could respond, the door opened. Professor entered, followed by a woman Jake did not recognize. She wore the formal robes of Academy administration. Mr. Ms. Carter, Professor said. This is Administrator. She needs to speak with both of you about the incident. Administrator moved to stand where she could see both students. Her forearms were folded in a way that suggested she was not happy. We have reviewed the security recordings. Mister, you threw the first punch. That is a serious violation of Academy rules. Jake sat up, wincing at the pain. He was mocking my dead brother. He said Danny deserved to die because humans are weak. Verbal provocation does not justify physical violence, said firmly. However, we also see that Mister was about to use lethal force against you when Ms. Carter intervened. That changes the situation significantly. She turned to, Ms. Carter, you issued a formal honor duel challenge under law. That challenge was accepted by Mister in front of witnesses. According to legal protocols, the duel was legitimate. You are not in violation of any rules. What about Jake? Asked. Mister will face consequences, said. However, given the circumstances and Mister's escalation to potentially lethal force, those consequences will be reduced. 1 month of community service instead of suspension. Jake nodded. That was fair. He had started the physical fight even if it provoked him. And asked. His expression became stern. Mister is facing expulsion. Attempting to seriously harm another student, regardless of who started the fight, is unacceptable. His family has been, the embassy is involved. This has become a diplomatic situation. After the administrator left, Professor remained. He looked at both students with his large, dark eyes. This incident has shaken the entire academy. Students are questioning assumptions they have held for years. Some species are their opinions of humanity. Is that good or bad? Jake asked. Both, the professor said. Change is always difficult, but necessary. The Galactic Council has operated on certain beliefs about each species for a long time. Sometimes those beliefs need to be challenged. He turned to, the Council has requested that you appear before them. They want to hear about human capabilities from someone who can demonstrate them firsthand. Frowned, I am just a student. You are a human who defeated in single combat using their own fighting techniques, Professor said. You are proof that humans are not what many council members believe. Your testimony could change policies. It could change how humanity is viewed across the galaxy. Over the next 3 weeks, the Academy slowly adjusted to the new reality. Jake completed his community service by helping in the Cultural Understanding program. He found that talking with alien students about their cultures and sharing human perspectives was actually more fulfilling than he had expected. Other human students walked with more confidence now. Some alien students were more respectful, though a few seemed resentful. The comfortable hierarchy that had existed before was disrupted, and not everyone was happy about it. Became something of a legend. Students from various species approached her, asking questions about human culture and capabilities. Some wanted to learn human fighting techniques. Others wanted to understand human psychology. Answered their questions patiently, always emphasizing understanding over competition. One afternoon was in the training center when an unexpected visitor arrived. Stood in the doorway, his body language uncertain. "May I speak with you?" he asked in standard. Gestured to a bench and they both sat down. Injuries had healed, but he carried himself differently now, less arrogant, more thoughtful. "I want to apologize," said. "Not because I was beaten, but because I was wrong, about you, about humans, about many things." "I am listening," said. "I have spent my whole life being told that are superior," continued. "My family is important in society. I grew up believing that we were better than other species, especially humans. You proved me wrong, but more importantly, you showed me why I was wrong." He looked at his hands. "You could have killed me. You had many opportunities, but you chose mercy. You chose to teach instead of destroy. That is not weakness. I see that now." "What will you do now?" asked. "I am being expelled from the academy," said. "But I have requested permission to study human culture and history on Earth. I want to understand. Not just to avoid being beaten again, but because I realize how much I do not know. How much my people do not know." Considered this. Earth is not an easy place for right now. Many humans still remember the war. You would face prejudice. "As you faced prejudice from me," pointed out. "Perhaps it is time I understood what that feels like." Stood and extended her hand, looked at it, then reached out and shook it in the human manner. "I will write a letter of recommendation for you," said, "but the rest is up to you." "Thank you," said. He paused. "May I ask a question?" "Yes." "When you fought me, you said you had defeated 17 opponents. Was that true, or were you trying to intimidate me?" Smiled slightly. "It was true. I can show you the records if you want." Shook his head. "I believe you. I just wanted to know how much I underestimated you." He left quietly and returned to her training. The day came for her to travel to the Galactic Council chambers. She wore her dress uniform and carried herself with quiet confidence. Jake came to see her off. "Good luck," he said. "Show them what humans are really made of." "I will show them the truth," corrected. "That is all anyone can ask for." The council chamber was enormous, with representatives from 73 different species arranged in a vast circular room. Stood in the center, feeling very small, but she had faced worse situations before. She spoke clearly and calmly about human nature. She explained that Earth's violent history had taught humans hard lessons about war and peace. She showed recordings of human peacekeeping missions, human medical teams helping alien populations, human scientists collaborating with other species. "We are not perfect," said. "No species is, but humans have learned to take our greatest weaknesses and turn them into strengths. Our emotions drive us to protect others. Our stubborn nature makes us persistent in solving problems. Our ability to adapt means we can work with any species willing to work with us." A representative stood, recognized him from the records as part of family. "You defeated one of our students in combat. Some say this proves humans are a threat." "With respect," replied, "I proved that underestimating any species is dangerous. I studied fighting techniques because I respected them enough to learn from them. That is what humans do. We learn, we adapt, we improve. Is that not what all species in this council should do?" 3 months after the fight, the Stellar Concordance Academy had changed in ways both obvious and subtle. The change was not dramatic or sudden. It was like watching ice melt, gradual but inevitable. Jake walked through the corridors without the constant tension he had felt before. Other students greeted him by name now, not just humans, but aliens from various species. They had seen him stand up for his beliefs, even when he knew he would lose. That kind of courage was respected across cultures. His community service had turned into something more. Jake now helped run the grief counseling program, working with students from all species who had lost loved ones. It turned out that pain was universal. A student who lost his brother in a mining accident felt the same grief as Jake did. A student whose sister died of illness cried the same tears. Loss was loss, regardless of what species you were. Had become a special instructor at the academy. She taught a new course called Cross-Species Understanding Through Combat Theory. The class was not about learning to fight aliens. It was about understanding how different species thought, moved, and solved problems. Combat was just the framework for exploring deeper cultural differences. The class was popular. Students from dozens of species attended, eager to learn from the human who had defeated a using their own techniques. But lessons were not about victory. They were about respect. Every species has strengths and weaknesses, explained to her class one day. Are stronger and faster than humans, have 4 arms and can multitask in ways we cannot, can see in spectrums of light we are blind to. But none of that makes any species superior. We are all different. Different does not mean better or worse. It just means different. A student in the back raised his hand. But there must be some way to measure which species is most capable. Capable at what? Asked. Physical strength, intelligence, empathy, problem-solving. Every species excels at different things. The question is not who is best. The question is how we can work together so everyone's strengths can be used. Jake sat in on some of his classes when his schedule allowed. He was amazed at how she could take complicated ideas and make them simple. She never talked down to students, but she also never made things more complex than they needed to be. After one class, a young human student approached nervously. Ms. Carter, some of the alien students still think humans are violent. How do I change their minds? Smiled gently. You do not change minds by arguing. You change them by example. Be the kind of human you want them to see. Be fair. Be honest. Be strong when you need to be, but also be kind. Eventually, they will see that humans are more than any single trait. The Galactic Council had been true to their word. After testimony, several policy changes were implemented. Humans were given more responsibilities in council operations. Earth was chosen to host a new Academy satellite campus. Several species specifically requested human advisors for conflict resolution. The government made the most surprising move. They announced a new exchange program where young warriors would train on Earth, learning human approaches to combat and peace. Was one of the first volunteers. He sent a message from Earth 6 weeks into his stay. I understand now why you said it would not be easy. Humans here remember the war. Some refuse to speak with me. Others treat me with suspicion. But there are also humans who give me a chance. They teach me about your history, your culture, your way of seeing the universe. I am learning that everything I was taught about humanity was incomplete. Thank you for starting me on this path. Read the message to Jake over lunch in the Academy cafeteria. Do you think he really changed? Jake asked. Or is he just saying what you want to hear? I think he is trying, said. That is all anyone can do. Change is hard. Admitting you were wrong is harder, but he is making the effort. That counts for something. They were interrupted by Professor, who approached their table with his usual graceful walk. Ms. Carter, mister, I have interesting news. The Council has approved a new initiative. They want to create a task force for preventing interspecies conflicts before they begin. They have asked you both to be part of it. Jake nearly dropped his fork. Me, but I am still just a second-year student. You are a human who understands the cost of conflict, Professor said. You have channeled your pain into something positive. That is exactly the perspective they need. Looked thoughtful. When would this start? Not until after you graduate, the professor assured her. For now, they want you to continue your studies and your teaching, but they wanted you to know that your future, if you choose it, includes serving the entire galactic community. After the professor left, Jake sat in silence for a moment. Do you remember what said that day? About humans being primitive who got lucky. I remember, said. I think about that sometimes, Jake continued. About how humans are seen by the rest of the galaxy. We come from a hard world. We have a violent past. We still struggle with our own problems. But maybe that is exactly why we are valuable. We know what it is like to be underestimated. We know what it is like to have to prove ourselves. And we know that understanding is harder but better than fighting. Nodded, Earth taught us how to survive. Now we can teach the galaxy how to live together. Over the following months, the changes continued to spread. More human students enrolled in the academy. More alien students requested to study on Earth. The barriers between species did not disappear, but they became lower. One day, received a package from the... Inside was a ceremonial blade, the kind given to warriors who had proven themselves in combat. Attached was a letter from N, her old master. Carter, the letter read and translated. You have done what I hoped you would. You have shown my people that strength without wisdom is hollow. You have proven that the best victory is the one where both sides learn. I am proud to have trained you. Wear this blade not as a weapon, but as a reminder that the sharpest edge is a keen mind. showed the letter to Jake. He read it and smiled. He is right, you know, you could have just beaten and walked away, but you taught him, you taught all of us. I only did what anyone should do, said. I saw someone who needed help and I helped. That is what humans do. That is what anyone should do. Not everyone would have shown mercy, Jake pointed out. Was quiet for a moment. When I was fighting, I thought about how angry I was when she died. I wanted revenge then. I wanted to hurt the like they hurt me. But N taught me that revenge is a cycle. It never ends unless someone chooses to end it. So I ended it. Not with more violence, but with understanding. The semester continued. Jake completed his requirements and moved into his third year. He declared a focus on interspecies psychology and conflict prevention. Finished her fourth year with top honors and was offered a permanent position as an instructor. The Academy held a ceremony to honor both of them for their contributions to cross-species understanding. It was awkward for both Jake and, who did not like being the center of attention. But they stood on the stage and accepted the recognition because it was not really about them. It was about showing that change was possible. Ambassador from Earth attended the ceremony. Afterward, she spoke with privately. The Council wants you to know that you have done more for human reputation in 3 months than most diplomats do in years. You showed them that humans are not just survivors from a harsh world. You showed them that we are teachers, healers, and peacemakers. I am just one person, said. Every change starts with one person, the ambassador replied. Your actions rippled outward. Other humans see what you did and find their own courage. Other species see what you did and question their own prejudices. Never underestimate the power of a single act done with conviction. A year after the fight, Jake stood in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The view never got old. Billions of stars, and around many of them were worlds full of beings trying to understand their place in the universe. Do you ever think about how this all started? Jake asked. With you finishing a fight I started. You did not start it, corrected. Started it with his prejudice. You just reacted. I finished it not because you needed saving, but because the situation needed resolution. Still, Jake said, thank you for everything. For teaching me that strength is not just about fighting, that courage is not just about standing up, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose mercy. Smiled, it was a rare expression on her usually calm face. You taught me something too. You reminded me why I do this. Why I study, why I train, why I teach. It is not about proving anything. It is about protecting people. Your brother, my sister, every innocent being who does not deserve to suffer. That is worth fighting for, and that is worth showing mercy for. They stood in comfortable silence, two humans who had shown the galaxy something important. Not that humans were the strongest or the best, but that humans were capable of taking their greatest challenges and turning them into their greatest strengths. Earth had been a hard teacher. War, violence, loss, all of it had shaped humanity into what it was. But humans had learned from those lessons. They had learned that survival was not enough. That strength without compassion was hollow. That the ability to destroy meant nothing compared to the choice to protect. The galaxy was learning too. Species that had once looked down on humans now asked for their help. Problems that had seemed impossible to solve were being addressed with human persistence and adaptability. Conflicts that had simmered for generations were being resolved through human mediation. It was not perfect. There were still species that distrusted humans. There were still problems that seemed impossible to solve. But progress was being made, one conversation at a time, one friendship at a time, one act of understanding at a time. Jake looked at, what do you think happens next? We keep going, said simply. We keep learning, we keep teaching, we keep showing the galaxy that humans are more than what anyone expected. Not because we are better, but because we refuse to be less than we can be. And if someone else starts a fight? His eyes glinted with quiet determination. Then we finish it. Not with violence if we can avoid it, not with hatred, but with the same thing that has always made humans special. We finish it with courage, with wisdom, and with the understanding that mercy is not weakness. It is the ultimate strength. Below them, the Academy continued its work. Hundreds of students from across the galaxy studied together, learned together, and slowly began to see each other not as different species, but as fellow beings sharing the same universe. One fight in a classroom corridor had changed everything. Not because of the violence, but because of what came after: understanding, growth, change, hope. That was the real human gift to the galaxy. Not the ability to fight, but the ability to choose not to. Not the strength to destroy, but the wisdom to build. Not the power to conquer, but the courage to cooperate. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. Many species had assumed that humans were just violent primitives who got lucky. They were wrong. Humans were survivors who learned, fighters who chose mercy, warriors who preferred peace. And in the end, that made all the difference. The stars shone bright through the observation deck window. Somewhere among them were worlds that needed what humanity had to offer: understanding, bridge building, the ability to turn enemies into friends and friends into family. Jake and returned to their duties, two humans carrying the weight of their species' reputation with quiet grace. They had shown the galaxy what humanity could be. Now it was up to the rest of humanity to prove it was not a fluke. But was not worried. She had seen the strength in Jake's persistence. She had seen the courage in his willingness to change. She had seen the respect in Professor's eyes. The galaxy was learning, and so were humans. Together they would build something better than what came before, not perfect but better, and that was enough. That was always enough. There was silence as the council members considered her words. Another representative from a species did not immediately recognize spoke up. "What do humans want from the council?" "The same thing everyone wants," said. "To be seen for who we really are, not what others assume we are, to be given fair opportunities to prove our worth, to be respected as equals in this galactic community. We are not asking for special treatment, just fairness." The session continued for hours, answered questions, addressed concerns, and challenged assumptions. By the end, she could see that some minds had changed, though others remained skeptical. Change would not happen overnight, but it was beginning. Warriors, but she had learned from that day. She had made sure she would never be helpless again. As walked toward the medical bay to check on Jake, she thought about what it said. That humans were primitive, emotional, weak. He had been wrong about all of it. Humans were emotional, yes, but they channeled those emotions. They learned. They adapted. They survived. And when necessary, they fought not out of hate, but out of love for those they wanted to protect. That was the real strength of humanity, not violence but purpose. A kick he tried to grab, she ducked under his arm. None of his attacks were landing, and was not even breathing hard. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the fight that was not really a fight continued. Was putting everything he had into his attacks, and was making it look easy to avoid them all. Then stopped dodging and started fighting back. Weak but stupid as well. Your entire species is barely worth the resources the council wastes on you. Something inside Jake snapped. He threw the first punch.